Welcome to GOLT Talk, your podcast for technology and innovation in the legal profession. If you're searching for solutions to revolutionize your legal practice, you're in the right place. 10 minutes pure, actionable product insights from CEOs shaping the future of legal technology. And here is your host, Tom Pfennig.
After some technical difficulties, I really appreciate the patience and the breadth of expertise that my guest on Law Subscribes episode today is bringing. Tom Pfennig, welcome to the show.
Great being with you, Matthew. Thank you.
Well, this is going to be hard for us because when we talked before we scheduled this interview, time just flew. So, we'll see how we do with a little bit of a shorter time frame. Nevertheless, Tom, for my audience, in case they haven't followed you on LinkedIn yet and seen some of your great content, tell my audience about yourself.
Thank you so much, Matt. Yeah, my name is Tom Pfennig. I'm the CEO and founder of Transforming.legal, a boutique that is specializing on digital transformation in the legal and compliance space. We own and operate a platform called GOLT.ai with a T. That is one of the largest legal tech platforms in the world, covering 2,500 solutions, bridging essentially the gap between legal tech solutions and purchasers all over the world. Before I built this company 2 years ago, I left Bayer AG as the Chief Compliance Officer, Head of Data Privacy, and the global sponsor for the digital transformation of a fairly large legal and compliance function with roughly 1,200 professionals. This has been an amazing journey until now, where I'm still leveraging the learnings from this transformation. 4 years overall, Financial Times Europe recognized the company as the most innovative in-house legal team in Europe. And I'm sure we will find some space on your podcast to talk about that as well. Again, great being with you, and congratulations on your podcast as well.
Yeah, thank you. So then your focus on AI. To ask the obvious question, why?
Yeah. I think we have experienced the benefits of deploying solutions pre-AI in my former company, meaning changing from a very reactive business operating model to a very proactive service delivery model in the legal and compliance team, which means you have greater focus, more flexibility in terms of dedicating your time and effort to matters that really provide value. You have more time for yourself. And after 2022, when ChatGPT came in and we had processes designed, data already channeled, deploying that technology gave that transformation an additional boost. And I'm seeing this in our current practice as well. If you deploy AI smartly, responsibly, and systemically, it's just one of the most amazing opportunities to redesign your target delivery model and really build either a law firm or an in-house department or wherever you are, where the human fulfillment, satisfaction is at the core, and not what we are seeing, unfortunately, in the more traditional systems and models, where it's a rat race, it's the hamster's wheel, people are burned out, lots of frustration, lots of mundane work. It doesn't have to be that way anymore with AI.
Well, it sounds like if folks go back and listen to some of the CLEs I've published about why you should ditch the billable hour and use the subscription model, all those things you just said are very, very related. But look, I could probably name 30 to 40 AI tools off the top of my head, right? Most of them for lawyers, right? Yes, you've got like your 5 to 10 consumer grade, AI tools, but then there's dozens, if not hundreds, of AI solutions for lawyers or law firms specifically. So what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, I think we are again talking step 2 before step 1.
Okay.
Whole hype cycle about the tools is something that I can obviously understand, and it's certainly part of the equation. However, it doesn't start with that. From my experience, there's different trains of schools. I understand that. Some say, I put the new kitchen appliance out there and the people will learn how to use it. Others will say, you better study the manual, you better look at where you are, you better take a little bit of a breather and see whether the folks in the kitchen are really ready, willing, and able to use that new tool, and you start a different way. What do I want to say? Many organizations have licensed legal tech tools, and I completely see where you're coming. We have, as I said, 2,500 options on GOLT.ai. From my own experience, however, you should first and foremost map what you're doing. You should identify the spaces where you're really adding value. You should identify the spaces where you're not adding value. You should also identify those areas where you can deploy tech fairly rapidly without redesigning processes, without rewiring your client base or your in-house team. So it is much more complicated in my view than just switching on a button and deploying the tools that we all know, rather than looking at your status quo, defining your to-be state, and also structuring the way getting there while bringing everybody on board what this journey means, what this journey leads to, what this journey has to offer for me, and igniting the spark, really driving passion into this new era of legal compliance, whatever services, and then bringing in the tech as an augmenting tool, as an enhancer, but not as the foundation of it all. And that's where I think there is a bit of a disconnect at times between reality and fantasy.
So the lawyers who I'm working with and training, first of all, they're open-minded enough that they know they need to learn what they don't know, but they do think of AI as some sort of magic box that you put something in and you get perfect results. That's what they're expecting, right? Now, of course, those of us who are in the know of large language models and them being probabilistic, not deterministic, that's simply not it. But you hit on a really important word. You said, let it augment us. And so it bears repeating, though I don't think I've said it in months on the podcast, is, a way to think about AI is augmented intelligence, right? Use it to enhance our work. So, what I would recommend to folks is, the tools that I would use for this are a combination of Perplexity Pro in trying to do what you're talking about right now. Not necessarily you don't have security and privacy expectations inside of a consumer grade tool like that, even though it is incredibly powerful. So I wouldn't give it any proprietary information. But what you could do is you can give it broadly your situation and ask, how can I do all the things you just said, Tom? Here's the things that we're doing. What are my gaps, right? You could work with, and I like Perplexity Pro, but people inside of, Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude, whatever your tool is, use it to augment getting to what you were just talking about, and then leveraging maybe even a tool like NotebookLM Pro to figure out based on that output, and maybe with some more, and in the Pro version and Notebook, you're entitled to maybe a little bit more security and privacy settings than the consumer grade tools. Figure out maybe what some of those gaps are and what tools to attach. Now you have to curate the sources in those notebooks to make sure you're getting high quality output. And why I like Perplexity Pro rather than these other consumer grade tools is it's answering you based on sources that it's finding online, right? So that's one of the reasons why I like that better. But Tom, are you helping, or any of the companies or products that you have, do you help with that stage one? Or what do you recommend that my audience do to get this stage one?
There's this saying, Matt, legal technology or AI is a solution to a problem that needs to be identified. And this is where things start. You use Perplexity, others use other LLMs. There is 4,000 legal tech tools out there. The first question is, for what are you using your Perplexity? Or I don't want to really promote any product yet. Happy to dive deeper into certain categories and what I'm seeing to be front runner or early disruptor. But first and foremost, I would suggest that people sit down, and with people, I really mean those who orchestrate the change, who offer these tools, who license them in, who have a certain strategy in mind, why they are bringing these technologies into an organization, to identify the pain points. Let's just call it like this. The pain points that I want to take out of my organization with the help of this technology. Yes, the answer to your question, we are helping clients around the world to first define the target operating model. Where do I want to be in 2, 3, 4, 5 years with this technology? And we also need to make sure that we don't forget, if you deploy this tech professionally, ethically, and effectively, you will free up space. I'm sure you are experiencing this when you do not use Perplexity or whatever tool you're preferring. It takes you 10 times more time to find what you're looking for. So this is obviously an accelerator for your research, for your drafting, or whatsoever. So you have already done that homework. In a number of organizations, especially complex ones, where there is also interdependencies to functions or in law firms to clients, you should first start with your design discussion. What do I want to change structurally, organizationally, foundationally? And then the second question is obviously, what tools? My experience is start low. And there is obviously some wisdom to say, here is one of these big AI research tools. Go and find out what it can do for you. Now, recently, Artificial Lawyer came up with the study, or actually published data combined by Harvey and CMS, where lawyers in CMS, one of the world's largest law firms, have used Harvey, and over the year they have saved 118 hours on average. Now, that's great. If you look at how many hours a lawyer works in order to bill 1,800 per year, you are landing at about 3,000 hours per year. So 118 out of 3,000 is a little under 4%, which is a good starting point, but for sure not the potential that you can achieve with a systemic deployment of this technology if you structure it according to use cases, M&A research, contract drafting, due diligence, litigation preparation, whatsoever. That's where I think the music plays, and that's where we are helping clients all over the world.
Understood. Yeah, and really important thread I want to pull on what you just said is when deciding on the right tool and for what purpose. One of the analogies I give, Tom, is wanting to use ChatGPT for an all-in-one AI solution for everything is like trying to saw a 2x4 with a power drill.
Yes.
Right? You've picked the one tool, and you're not going to pick any other tool, and you're going to figure out how to do everything with a power drill to build a house and do construction. That's what you've decided. So it's really important that you think not only what tool and for what purpose, but then is this tool built for that purpose?
Exactly. Exactly. And, is it built for that purpose? Most likely, yes, because those, engineers and software developers, they have a certain target in mind when they build their product and they think they are delivering. Reality, it's something different at times, right? Because you may not want to have the bells and whistles that these big companies, big software providers offer to you. You may want to have, I'm sorry to say it, a good old teams, working, or even, I can tell you some companies are still in Excel when it comes to third-party due diligence or risk management, and it does it for them. So if you start, you go from horse to Ferrari in 2 days, it's not going to work. So
okay, so I like to give horse analogies too. By the way, I do because I also like to say when I see AI being built to help lawyers bill more time, that's like building a faster horse and buggy. When we have a Ferrari or a rocket ship to the moon, right? Yes. And fundamentally, getting back to your point, like if you don't look at the fundamentals, like if all of your incentives are bill more time, work more hours, then a 4% time savings is not oh great, how much more time can we save? It's that's 4% of revenue that's gone. But if you productize, if you do value-based billing, if you're not billing for how long it takes, but for the outcome or the problem avoidance, right? Or the speed to deal, those are different. Now you want all the AI in the world to help with everything.
Yes. Going back to analogies, because I think they are sometimes quite sticky. I cannot tell you who to attribute this quote, but I love it, so that I recite it. The invention of the electric light didn't happen because people innovated the candle. So this is maybe something we should also consider when we talk about the next era of legal and compliance services. Okay. You have started this with a subscription model, and I think this is certainly something that we will be seeing in the future. But there might also be pure self-service tools in countries where legal services are heavily deregulated over the next decade. And I can think of a few in Asia really thinking hard about this. So that's where I am missing a little bit the bold courage to think differently. You recall there was a computer company several decades ago that thought differently and is now one of the most valuable in the world. So I would encourage us as lawyers, and particularly the leaders running these law departments or law firms, to at least conceptually think differently. Bringing in technology is certainly one part of the equation, as I said, but without a defined new structure, without knowing what to do with the surplus capacity, without having an answer to, will I be able to still bill by the hour or not? I think it's all piecemeal.
Yes. And I love the candle analogy. The light bulb wasn't invented to make a better candle. And that makes me think of another analogy going back to the horses and the automobile. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but I've said this other places, is there, at least in New York, in other large cities, in the pre-industrial age, before the automotive vehicle was invented and rolled out, there was a manure problem because there were so many horses that there was all this manure. And they were shipping manure overseas. They were giving it to all the farmers in the United States. And there were committee meetings and government meetings about how do we solve this manure problem. The car wasn't invented to solve the manure problem. But it did.
It did. And then just building upon what you said, the procrastinators, when the automobile was invented, their argument was it would never succeed. They said there are never going to be enough chauffeurs in this world.
Right. Not that we'd be all driving our own vehicles.
So what do we want to say, I guess, is the question some of your viewers will ask. I think first and foremost is an amazing opportunity. So you had asked why AI. I think for those like me who have had the occasion and the opportunity to deploy it systemically in a complex organization, it frees up time. It really drills down to the core of adding value in your profession. And it just is a sea change to the traditional way of rendering legal services. So spraying optimism is the first thing. However, at the same time, you have to address the skepticism and the anxiety. And I get it. I mean, I cannot give you the details, but I can tell you the legal and compliance department I had the privilege of reforming, let's not just say transforming, reforming, shrunk by more than 20% overall in terms of FTE. And the way of service delivery didn't decrease by the same proportion. In fact, it increased. We measured it with the clients. So you have to have multiple work streams set up in parallel to manage the ramification and consequences this tech deployment will result in. And that's where I honestly understand why there is some hesitance, because it is a disruption of a magnitude we have not seen with the internet before.
And it's going so fast, right? And I do want to ask you what AI tools you personally are using, realizing that when this goes live, you could be using very different tools, and the tools you're using today might be very different in what they do and can do, right? So that's teaser for upcoming from Tom. But what you're talking about, though, I think is really important. It even goes back to what you were saying about there's not going to be enough chauffeurs, because I hear from lawyers, there's pre-AI. I've heard there's not enough lawyers, right, to serve all the unserved needs. And yet from lawyers today, I hear there's not enough business, that if I'm like too efficient or whatever, I can't get enough business. Now they're looking at the existing pie, not the expanded pie of the latent legal market opportunities, right, of people who are up and businesses who are priced out of billable hours, or who even could afford to pay a lot. They just need pricing certainty, right? So there's that expanding pie nature of it. And so going back to your team that shrunk but increased output, depending on the market, and for law in particular, and I'm focused more on private practice outside, counsel than in-house teams, you can expand the pie without having to shrink a team, because there is massive market opportunity. Meanwhile, inside a team, like in an in-house team, I can see how maybe you now have too much of a headcount if you're increasing efficiencies at a certain magnitude.
Yeah, I would qualify this a little bit.
Okay.
There is more opportunity in terms of automating legal services, because you're bringing solutions to the clients much faster than having a human intermediary. I get it. Whether this will ultimately lead to more revenue as the commodity of law will depreciate is or remains to be seen. However, what I think is severely underestimated in our profession, like in every other professional services, like psychologists, for example, is the human element. People seek lawyers to assign accountability, to share accountability, to maybe even delegate responsibility. But we are a guardian, we are a shield. And it's not just the answer on a computer that takes me out of a problem. It's the person that I am retaining for a potential court hearing or an argument or in another venue or whatsoever. That will provide me the ultimate confidence and comfort that this legal problem is going to be resolved. So I think we should associate the output of an LLM, self-based self-service tools, with the person behind that output that presents it in a court or in whatever disputes resolution committee or in a private setting that people want to still leverage. Which brings us down to the core of legal services. I was in Athens in the summer and gave a keynote, and it's, besides Rome, the birthplace of lawyers on this planet. These people came to rescue in heated debates. They came and listened to the problems of people, heritage, whatsoever, and converted these into legal dilemmas that ultimately could be adjudicated. This capacity, this ability needs to be redeveloped, because we are currently, even without AI, still too much in front of a computer and not in front of a person, of a real person. And that human interaction in a world full of algorithms, full of synthetic relationships, will still matter to many, I hope. And that's where we can really be, the legal psychiatrist, the legal therapist, whatever you want to call it, where you just take the heat of a human being who is struggling with a legal dilemma.
Yes, and let's be real, risk allocation, right?
That's the thing. Risk allocation, accountability sharing. As a general counsel, you want your high-profile law firm to sign on that deal,
right?
Because it is not an antitrust market dominance abuse, at least from our perspective. If somebody else claims it, I have my,
Opinion letter
in front of me and not and behind me to defend myself. So for sure, you always want in this system where enforcement, where reputational damage, where customer sentiment matters, you always want to have your shoulders broadened, and ideally with someone who knows this stuff inside out.
Right. Even though I think in the near future, I want a robot surgeon doing the surgery, because it doesn't matter when's the most recent time that they've had a meal. Did they get 8 hours of sleep last night, right? And also, they only know what they know from their own personal experience versus from every robot surgeon that's engaging in surgery. But I still want to talk to a human surgeon before and after the procedure.
Exactly. And we know the data. I've had a podcast where we drill down into self-driving, which is 10 times safer than human driving. We drilled down into precision rates of computer or robotic surgery, 98% versus 89%. Completely understand it. But as you said, if you get this diagnosis that necessitates the surgery, do you want to speak to a bot telling you have cancer, sir, and here is my digital twin who will take care of you? No, you definitely want the human in the loop in a very different meaning than we are currently addressing it. And that needs to be carved out much better, also by regulators, self-regulators, bar associations, governments. We are neglecting that element heavily by only focusing on the tech side.
There is quite a bit of grunt work that knowledge professionals are doing. And even though you'd consider some of it highly skilled, like in the medical industry, surgery, right? I don't want someone who is not a licensed doctor and surgeon, experienced surgeon doing surgery, right? But it is still this manual grunt work. For lawyers, it's a lot of writing and drafting and editing and revising. And in the language-based professions, these large language model-based AI tools just do it faster and better, and with the right instruction, even higher quality work. But it requires us to, instead of we are the drafters and the editors, we are the managing editors who are managing the AI tools that are doing the actual grunt work now. So we could offload this grunt work to higher level work. This is where, if you're hearing AI companies pitch, focus on the higher level work. The reality is there's not enough higher level work to bill by the hour and still have a profitable business.
I don't know what the future will hold with respect to the perfectionizing or a greater perfection of these tools. However, I would say nobody supervised the computer that beat Garry Kasparov in chess. Nobody is really supervising these super precise neurosurgical devices because they do it better than any human being. And I'm sure ChatGPT 7 or whatever model out there is no need for human observation for some areas.
Sure.
I also want to predict that the future consumers of law will be different than our generation, Mathew.
Mm-hmm.
We are people who are taking more time making a decision, more time assessing right or wrong than my children. To them, I am just super slow-mo in all I do. They want rapid resolution. And maybe it's wrong, then I go back to the drawing table and reassess, and next time it's gonna be right. But this permanent back and forth, and you get 2 lawyers in the house and 3 opinions, and then there is 4 months of caucusing, and at some point there will be white smoke and problem resolved. This is not gonna be the way our future clients want to get their legal cases resolved. And you see this actually in my practice in the in-house world. The business wants quick decisions. If the legal department is not delivering quick decisions, there is a high risk that the legal department is not being consulted, and they don't want this. You want to be at the table and not just at the enforcement table. So long story short, we should really kind of project a little bit better for law firms. What is the client of the future wanting from me? Do they want lengthy explanations, 50-page memos or contracts? Or do they want a blockchain type yes or no?
Yeah. And but even if we don't get to ChatGPT 7, right? Even if we don't get to GPT 7 because we've run out of data or compute or something, if the tools stagnated today, though, Tom, like this is what I want to emphasize for the audience, right? You could still, if figuring out your base at stage 1 and figuring out at stage 2 which tools to use to improve the things that you've identified, you could still, in today's world, save so much time and stop having to do the grunt work.
And this is an interesting topic in and of itself, because we're now kind of touching hallucination and precision and whatnot. So I want to see the first study, please, where people tell me about the hallucination of a human being in the legal profession. We did measure this in my former company, data privacy. Okay, so we looked at data privacy consultation. And out of the more complex advisory cases we looked at, about 80% were really hitting the nail on the head. 20% were problematic. Let's not just call them wrong, were a little bit difficult. In legal, you could say hallucination is part of the game, because in order to defend a different opinion, you have to construe the law in a different way, or you have to see the facts in a different way. The opponent may say, "You're hallucinating, man, because this cannot be true. The way you're seeing this fact is just third wrong." I would say the opposite. So there is, obviously, you don't call it hallucination, but there is disagreement, misalignment, because of different ways of looking at things. So in essence, we are claiming with this whole hallucination concept in mind, and I know that there is legitimacy bringing it up. There is for sure digital outcomes in the legal space. But the beauty of a legal dispute is that nobody owns 100% of accuracy and wisdom. There's always this 1% uncertainty that no machine and no human being will ever eliminate. So no matter how precise our brain, no matter how precise the LLM, there will always be hallucination in whatever meaning you see it.
And for the audio-only listeners, Tom was giving air quotes to hallucination. Just want to make sure I let the listeners know. Yeah, I very much am on the same page with you, Tom, about the whole hallucination thing. Like the way that I try to teach and explain it is, I do not, because of the hallucination problem, which is just a reality for humans also making decisions and using our mushy meat brains, to come up with things, right? I don't rely on any AI tools. I'll use them in other ways, but I don't rely on any AI tools giving me answers to inquiries or back and forth based exclusively on training data. As the father of a young child who's recently learned language, she's going to be 5 years old soon upon the data recording, right? To see how she's learning and trying to apply language, which, there are made up rules that make no sense logically, right? I think of the training data as that foundational learning language in young children. I would never rely on that as a source of truth. So I'm not using ChatGPT, even GPT search, to do anything, because it has a tendency as the ultimate generalist tool, incredibly powerful, but a generalist tool to give me factual-based data. I need some kind of ground truth. So that's why I like using Perplexity Pro, is because it's going to find a source before giving me an answer. If it gets something wrong, is that a hallucination? Or is it that the underlying ground truth has some incorrect information? Same thing with Notebook LM. If I am providing the sources and it's giving me incorrect information, there may be a problem with the sources, not a made up hallucination. And so that's where I think that we have to start thinking about it in terms of where are they getting the information from? We have to think like lawyers in particular, right? Show me the sources, right?
Yes. I think what is also coming is really the digital precedents coming out of these tools will provide a baseline for the output of similar prompts in the future. An algorithm will be able to calculate the probability score of similarity as well as outcome identity, meaning you will learn if this question has been asked or this legal scenario has been adjudicated already, here is the outcome. And there might be a few variables, but there is 99.5% similarity. So no human judge will adjudicate this case differently. Do not spend time in court on this matter, right? Because the likelihood of succeeding or prevailing is close to zero. So there will be much better outcome predictability regardless of the hallucination getting there, which will also help us to become more effective, more efficient, relieve the courts, hopefully. So going back to your original question, why AI? There is so much in that governments and other stakeholders could go for, which we never had the opportunity before. So long story short, don't get hung up on hallucination is my point.
Yeah, and I agree with you on the court thing and how, and really I even think regardless of AI, the business model, right? So if I make money, the more work I do manually in bill hours, even if I'm being ethical in my mind, right? I am going to file that lawsuit because I get to bill. I'm going to advise my client, let's just sue. Versus if I'm making money to help with problem avoidance on a long-term basis, a lifetime value perspective, rather than a build as much as I can right now, then that just changes the game. And that's a business model thing. Now the AI helps that problem avoidance business model be more profitable. That's what it does.
Exactly, especially in jurisdictions like the US, where you don't have the loser pays it all rule, where every party shoulders its own expense, at least in many cases.
It has to be contractual, or there are sometimes some statutes in narrow situations where the losing party pays all the legal fees, but that is not the default rule in the US. That's right. So we try to put it in contracts as much as we can.
Yes. But this gives you a very interesting calculation to tell your client, look, if you go for this case, you have a 20% likelihood of succeeding. This costs you 20K. I tell you, ethically, don't do it. Suck it up or whatever. And you just pay me 10% of the money that you would have spent and ultimately most likely lost the case. Then you're making big money without spending months in court preparation and court appearance.
Right, and there's opportunity cost to having to do all that stuff, right? Versus making money in your business, right, or whatever. The other thing is speaking of the legal ethics of it all, is if I'm using the AI and analytics tools, and I know if I bring this motion in front of this judge, right, and there's a 5% chance it's going to be granted, but I bring it anyway because I need to bill those hours, right? Or just because my client, let's say it's not even about the hours. My client says, no, I want to screw them. I want them to pay their to cost the legal fees.
Yes.
Is that malpractice? Can I be sanctioned knowing that it was going to be denied? Right? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, that's an open question. But I think if we know with certainty, or as much certainty as we can, that motion is going to fail, is that malpractice? Is a really good question.
Which now brings the problem of where are the regulators? Where are the lawmakers in this game?
Mm-hmm.
So there could technically be a regulation that if an algorithm calculates the likelihood of success below 5%, yes, as you said, it is malpractice to protect the judiciary of crap cases, as well as the wallet of the naive client of being ripped off. So that's where I would call those stakeholders onto the scene to also consider these opportunities from a customer protection perspective and from a judiciary efficiency perspective to leverage the benefits of this new era. But here we go again. I am missing these stakeholders. I'm missing orchestrated dialogue where everybody is at the table and we are simulating these scenarios and at least foreseeing certain outcomes that we then potentially codify.
So I promised my audience earlier, Tom, as much as we can keep going down that line of conversation, they may want to know what tech tools, AI or otherwise, that you might be using now. So tell us, like what are you using and how are you using it? And it's okay to talk about tech tools. There's so many of them. That's one of the reasons why they could maybe work with your company. So it's all good to mention names. There's no sponsorship from these tools.
Right. So you have to differentiate again based upon use cases.
Right.
Okay. So I have different hats on. I am a CEO and founder of a startup that builds at some point the world's largest legal tech platforms. So for that, we are using Base 44 and Lovable to design the UI to really accelerate the development of the tool, to help us with unit testing, help us with code testing, some vibe coding. So long story short, for that, for example, these two tools are of immense help. Then I create content for LinkedIn, for YouTube, for Spotify. So I am good at writing and I love poetry. I know that I'm more of a dreamer in this respect, but I am writing down my narrative, my story, and then I use Grok, Gemini, or ChatGPT to see how can it be improved. I must confess proudly, come to the situation where there was almost no change to my original. I showed it to my kids, and it was honestly fascinating that word by word, what I had prompted came back out as the optimized version. Nevertheless, there is optimization, and I use these three tools. I am also using Sora and Nano Banana for picture, image, video generation, and I love it. And now with the Disney characters on Sora, there's gonna be even more fun, obviously. So this is what I'm using for this category. We are, as I may have mentioned, validating legal and compliance tech tools. And if you go on GOLT.ai, you'll see our gold stars, and it's a growing group of products that have submitted themselves to our validation, and we have checked them and confirmed the claims or not. So in terms of certain, if I was in-house, for example, there is tools for whistleblowing. And I can tell you what I've seen from Diligent, from EQS, there's Nabex. I have not really looked at them, but there's these three, and some have more AI and some have less AI. There is also research tools. I was one of the first testing Noxtua, which is a Harvey and Legora and Libra competitor here in the European Union. They have partnered with publishers, so there is legal data behind that engine. They have trained with data from CMS, the law firm. So I find for research in terms of legal practice, this tool actually very interesting and very helpful. Of course, there is a litany of others. As I am currently more focused on marketing our services, we are also using CRM tools. There's Substack, there's HubSpot, there's Brava. So we are experimenting with their AI capabilities as well. If I was an in-house lawyer, of course, contracts is a big thing. So there's interesting options for bigger organizations. We know the iCertises, the Onnits, the Sirions of this world, but there's also smaller ones, and you may not even have heard of Recital or Spot Draft or the former henchman, now LexisNexis Suite. So this is where I had wrapped my head around it. We are also looking at tools that prevent fraud or corruption or asset misappropriation. So CERTA is a third-party risk management tool. Kona AI is a fraud detection tool. There is others in this space where corporations would be served very well to look at their data streams and find deviations and renegades and model potential legal risks around them. So long story short, it goes back to why am I using stuff? And this is what I've shared in terms of use cases, the portfolio that I'm using. Yes, Perplexity, I've checked it out. Great stuff for sure. At some point, you have just a surplus, maybe even overwhelmingly, of options that I do not need to venture into these new tools, but I'm reading along and I hear, Claude and Gemini, they are capturing market share from OpenAI because of precision. And it's interesting. I would really urge everybody to compare, because there is a difference, as you probably confirmed, in how they structure the output, how precise they are with quotes, how short they are, how politically correct, they frame this. So it's all catering your personal style and appetite. And I have been appreciating these augmenting intelligence tools, as you said originally.
Yeah, and you didn't just give one tool. Like that's like the biggest takeaway, right? Like, yes, if you're listening at 2 times speed, rewind and go to 1 time speed and listen to Tom's explanation of how he broke down the categories before listing out the tools and the purposes for which he's using the tools. Because I think that's a really important takeaway, whatever tools people ultimately end up using. And again, ask Tom when this episode goes live in a month or 2, what tools he's using could be very different. One of the reasons I like tools like a Perplexity is they have a proprietary large language model called Sonar, which is purpose-built for search and answer on the internet. And they are multi-model with Grok, with Gemini, with OpenAI, and with Anthropic, right? And so you've got these other tools that they bring in, and maybe I don't want to have 3 tabs open with Gemini, Claude, and ChatGPT, so I could just stay in Perplexity. But that's a preferences thing. Now, I do happen to think, in my experience, I only use Perplexity really for search and answer on the internet. I don't really use it for too many more things. Some math, because it interfaces with Wolfram Alpha, right? So it's actually using algorithms to do math and not large language models. So there are some benefits to that. But you could also, if you just want to do math, you don't need to get Perplexity. You could just get Wolfram Alpha, because they have their own AI tool as well. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, don't forget Google still. Google has its own search tool, and at the top of every Google query, you have an AI output. I was listening to a predictions webcast recently where it was fascinating that Google has 97 times more search queries than ChatGPT. So we all talk about these traditional models, but the good old behemoths like Google are still running the show.
And it's free, right? And so that's the other thing, is like free will always have a vast majority of users too. And if you want to get the better results in GPT search or Perplexity, you're going to have to pay, right? I still think, in my experience, although experiences may depends on your own experience with it for the audience, is I find Perplexity, since it has its proprietary search and answer model, Sonar, that it's using as like the brain kind of, or like the judge of all the other tools when it's doing its searching, versus Gemini, which is an ultimate generalist tool. I get better results out of Perplexity because it's purpose-built. Going back to your example of, we want purpose-built technology for contracts, for diligence, for whatever, right? So I find search and answer Perplexity does a better job, but it doesn't do as good of a job as just, I want to find this website for this company. Google is still invested that, right? So like purposes, but you can't just rely on one tool, I think, is the major takeaway from this conversation, which brings us to what GOLT stands for. Tom, what does GOLT stand for?
Global Overview of Legal Technology.
Right.
You could also say Go Legal Tech, whatever you want. But the acronym is GOLD with a T, because we focus on technology and not the shiny metal. Yet we hopefully add a little bit of transparency, cut through the noise. And one key point really is also for the legal tech vendors, be more precise. Who is your ideal client profile? Right. Because you're firing towards everybody and you're missing your target largely. And it's inundating potential clients because everybody is knocking at the door, even though they should go to the next door and not to mine. So really being more precise on who do you want to serve? What's your price point that only MNCs can afford? Don't go to SMEs, for example. Let's really be more precise on both sides. What do I need and what do I offer? I'm going to be at the Legal Tech Talk in London June 17th, which is one of the largest legal tech conferences in the world. I'm going to be moderating a panel, also legal tech vendors, what you think your clients need and what your clients actually want. And that dialogue is sometimes quite asynchronized, not really coordinated. And that dialogue, I think, would serve both sides very well. But you have to have salespeople who know law, and you have to have purchasing people who know law. And unfortunately, at times, those users are not part of that conversation. So meaning we lawyers should inject ourselves in these purchasing discussions, not just outsource to procurement, not just rely on legal ops people. Have a seat at the table and tell those legal tech vendors what I need. And this goes back to the horse and the Ferrari. The tooth is usually in the middle. I would say don't go for this race to the top, I'd say war. Look at those who can scale down, who have still human capacity to explain what's going on, what is the change, or what's the benefit, and iterate softly. Don't go for the Ferrari right from the get-go.
Yeah, and so I also just want to encourage my audience to check out GOLT.ai, GOLT, as in Global Overview of Legal Tech, and in a roundabout way, well, you could just use Google or GPT search or Perplexity to ask about these legal tech tools. Well, GOLT is purpose-built to sort of answer those questions, right? And that's going back to this purpose-built tech thing. It says describe the legal tech solutions you need. Obviously, you have to do stage one, but if you've done stage one, come to GOLT. And GOLT is going to essentially, it's going to be able to help you cut through the noise of all the legal tech solutions out there.
You're absolutely right. And we know that we are going to compete against these models. However, the moment you have curated data where humans are involved in generating onboarding videos, explainer videos, client testimonials, CEO podcasts, user ratings, there is no tool that combines it in a way that it's catering the very lawyer in Hong Kong, in Austin, in Cologne, that is looking for this tool in my 5-people legal practice that helps me solve the data privacy cookie issue, just to be very simple.
And specific. And this might be this is the most, we've said a lot of great stuff, Tom, but I think we'll conclude it with this. That is the highest value in an AI-powered world, curation. I really, truly believe that, right? And so what GOLT is doing with that for legal tech to curate it, we, the lawyers who are not billing by the hour, can leverage some of these tools, whether internally and or externally, to curate our knowledge, our experience, our things for our clients. And even if our clients have some version of self-serve, that curation is what can distinguish us from the rest of the competition. So we'll leave it at curation being perhaps maybe the most important superpower in this AI-powered world, and that's what you're doing over with GOLT and Transform.legal. So, Tom, if people wanted to follow up with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So, I'm having a nice follower base on LinkedIn. So, Tom Pfennig, you'll find me most likely, not many with my last name out there. Secondly, tom@transforming.legal is my email address. Or, as you said, you just go on GOLT with a T.ai and you'll see the product. You can prompt for free. Even if you register after 10 free prompts, we are not going to charge you. We're not going to charge legal tech vendors to list the products. We have already done a lot of own research to be as all-encompassing as possible. But obviously, this tool is driven by user feedback, legal tech vendor acceptance in utilization, and that's our humble and nimble mission, as the name indicates. And as I have gone through it, transforming.legal is a positive thing. It doesn't necessarily lead to job losses or robots rendering legal services. It is a transformation to the better legal profession.
Yeah. Tom, one last time, thanks so much for coming on Law Subscribed.
Thanks, Matt. It was a pleasure and a really insightful exchange with you and your insights and wisdom as well.